The naming convention of our historical sources is a point of confusion for some, contention for others, and it's something that we can easily adjust, and instead of finding confusion, we could find some enlightenment maybe. Good morning, I'm Chris Van Slambrock, live in Meyer, and today I've got a little complaint, a gripe even, and it's the shelf marks of our historical sources, using them as identifiers as often as we do. And combine that with calling manuscripts by their location is a bit misleading and confusing as well. The fact is that these shelf numbers change over time if the property has moved around. So we should first try to utilize whatever title is actually being used in the historical source, if it's there. If it's not, whose collection was it first? So if the use of the shelf marks and the location of its current holding is a problem waiting to happen, how do we address it as a community? Firstly, honestly, I only care about the stuff that Master Meyer touches upon in the 5 degrees of Master Meyer, but it obscures more than it helps using these shelf marks or calling these manuscripts from different locations by different authors around Europe by the current location of the book. It doesn't inform other than its location. Let's take example from Master Meyer's first known Feckbooker, and that sucker was internally dated to 1561, and it was dedicated to Uri Hans Veldenz, the son of Ludwig II, who was in the care of his cousin Wolfgang Zweibrücken. Anyway, this manuscript is currently held in Munich's National Museum, along with a bunch of other fencing books. So saying it's Meyer's Munich is weird. And it does inform you where it is, but that's it. And that's not enough. It's not as helpful or informative as it could be. Anyway, calling a manuscript by its shelf number is supposed to be shorthand. It's not supposed to be utilized externally. It's supposed to identify things inside a museum. And that is subject to change when they reorganize or have a change in administration even. So it's not the wisest way to name something. There are plenty of manuscripts, house books, Krieg book, Fechtbooker, Italian, German, and otherwise, that old shelf numbers and old identifiers are completely gone from memory. Having that as an example should just tell us that we should move away from that practice. We can take example the I-33, the Tower manuscript, Feck Book 1. It's got a couple more, 3 or 4 names. But it's far from being unique. A great many fencing manuscripts have been written and no longer go by their identifier numbers or the locations they were held. The issue is so confused that people have even created like a modern shorthand cataloging. Dirk, forget his name, famous guy, but it still incorporates the location and is not as universal. It's super helpful, but it doesn't inform anything. It is just a shorthand, so you don't have to write out the title, etc. But I would have historical fencing related researchers use the title given by the author, if it's given, and then defer to the next most unique identifier. Name it, after the first known compiler of the collection. It's theirs, after all. So that means we have a choice for Master Meyer, his Fechtbücher. He titled it and he put a date on it, but we know that it was a collection that was compiled well before, at least 10 years before, with this Wurstenfust. But since we're seeking clarity, we definitely should distinguish between the front-loaded elder material that Meyer adds to. He adds a title page, and that says that he's going to add some rapier, which he does, in an old style, and says he's going to add some new stuff, which is an echo of Andrea Palmfine. At the end of his work, he's like, this was all old stuff. I'll show you new stuff in my next work. Unfortunately, we don't have that one. I digress. But several pages after this Messer's side sword rapier thing he's got going, he has another title page, and that was written in Speyer at the Diet with the courtier Stephen Heinrich von Eberstein. It covers this university fencing, this modern circle university fencing. And after that, Meyer puts in his rules. At the beginning of the book, we also get some nice colored diagrams, and that goes with that second little Fechtbuchlein, this little booklet, fencing booklet. So we shouldn't really call it Meyer's, that second Fechtbücher, we shouldn't really call it the Rustenfust, nor can we call it by its shelf number to delineate what's inside, miscellaneous 82, or its location, the Rastatt, or even Derek's thing, JMR. I call it Meyer's Fechtbuch, just as that's what we call these other collections, like the Pole House Book, or the Tollhofer Fechtbuch, etc., etc. I certainly believe that Meyer was doing the same thing as Christian Egenoff and was preparing this for publication. The last collection of fencing material from the 30s was from him. And Meyer would have known and seen the profitability in that. He was already publishing. He's in the industry. Anyway, I digress. What's another example? The Psalms. So we have Meyer's second handwritten Fechtbücher, and it is undated, but we know when he had the student, Otto von Solms, and his brother were in town, and we know how long they were in town, and we know when they returned. So we can't name it after a time span, and naming it two different dates is ridiculous. So we know who it was dedicated to, so we can call it the Solms manuscript, and it tells us something. As the Lund collection has more than one fencing manuscript within it, and the shelf number also is not helpful because it doesn't actually even have one. Anyway, that was a fun ramble for me. Chris Vance Lambrock, Living Meyer. I hope you are too.